Hey YouTube, Common Collector here, and I am finally bringing you guys an update to my Harpie deck profile. Now this was the first deck that I ever profiled on my channel, and I'm really excited to bring you guys the update, because for about the past year, we haven't really had any good new support for Harpies or anything, and we, just sort of like the way that the format has been, it hasn't really been a good time for Harpies, but now we just got Harpie's Feather Duster back to 1 copy per deck and whatnot, so yeah, Harpies is sitting in a good spot. So we no longer really have to go into the Mist Valley shenanigans and whatnot to try to loop our opponent out of plays. Now we can really just go ahead and go into our Cyber Slash, and I generally try to go into the Link Monster as well. If you get those two side by side, then it's usually a pretty good board in order to sort of keep the board in your favor. So anyways, guys, if you like this deck profile, please consider hitting that subscribe button, because we are getting really close to 1,000 subscribers. I'm really hoping to hit 1,000 subs by the end of the month, but if you guys can make that happen quicker, I would really appreciate it. So anyways, without further ado, let's get on into the deck profile. So this is going to be a relatively pure build. So I like my pure builds on my channel. So starting off with 3 copies of the Harpie Perfumer. This card here is just fantastic for the deck. When we got this in the Duelist of the Roses set, or whatever that, yeah, I think that's what the set was called. Yeah, that set was just fantastic for this. So basically what this does is that when this card is summoned, normal or special summoned, you're able to add 1 spell or trap card that lists Harpie Lady Sisters in the card text. And if you have a level 5 or higher Harpie on the field when you activate this effect, then you're able to add a second card. So that doesn't come up every time, but it actually is pretty possible in this deck, and that's sort of a big focus. I like to just sort of try and combo off as best as I can in this deck, and that's really the fun of it. This deck is not still uber competitive and whatnot, but it is really fun to just try to combo off as hard as you can, try to get out some high level monster, summon out the Harpie Perfumer, and then go off from there. Then we're going on into 3 copies of Harpie Channeler. So this is your basically your best starter of the deck. That kind of flip-flops between her and Perfumer, but if you can set up a Channeler first, it's usually pretty nice. So what Channeler does is you discard a Harpie card, and then you can special summon 1 Harpie from the deck, besides itself, basically. And so I finally did kick out the Harpie's Pet Dragon from the deck. I really did like running the rank 7 engine, but I figured now was finally the time to kick it out now that we have the Cyber Slash. And so, but yeah, overall, this card just really helps to get your plays started and whatnot. And then also, when you do have a dragon monster on the field, you're able to make this, or, mandatory effect, this becomes a level 7. So that's really nice, because then you can also get off the benefit of your Perfumer just by sort of manipulating the level of your Channeler. So we're going to go on then into 3 copies of Harpie Harpist. I've seen a few people dropping this down to 2, and I think that's kind of a mistake. I really like having this at 3 yet, because, you always want to see this and Channeler in your opening hand. And I play a lot of discarding effects in this deck in order to make sure that you get off some good discards with this and your continuous spell. So what this card does is that when it is discarded, it adds another Harpie monster from your deck to your hand. I mean, really, it just has to be a Wing Beast type monster with 1,500 or less attack, I believe, but generally we're just going for the Harpies. And then besides that, also, it does have another effect which doesn't come up very often, but if you have a Wing Beast monster on the field and you summon this card, then you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls and that Wind monster and bounce them back up to the hand. So it is just kind of nice to get a little bit of spot removal there if you need it. It can get rid of some big boys that you can't get over otherwise. But we do run a really good, extra deck for this build, and that really helps you to do a lot of spot removal as well. 2 copies of Oracle. I've tried bumping this down to 1, but I still like it at 2 because it's just always nice as a little extender, and then also it sets you up for your next turn. So what this card does is that if you have a level 5 or higher Harpie, just like the Perfumer requires for its bonus effects, you can special summon this from your hand onto the field. So it just helps you to extend into further plays. And then along with that, you're able to activate the effect during when it's summoned. And then during the end phase, you're going to get back a Harpie card that lists Harpie Lady Sisters in its card text. So just like Perfumer just helps you to get a little bit more hand advantage. It's just a bummer that it happens during the end phase. So, and that card comes out of your graveyard. So it is nice though to like get some of those cards back. I'm playing 2 copies of the Harpie Lady 1. I know a lot of people like playing the Cyber Harpie, but I really don't. I prefer the Harpie Lady 1 just to get a little bit of attack boost. People argue that your one guy is going to be an 1800 attack beater, but my argument is that doesn't really matter. Like getting like 1800 attack isn't always going to really help you that much. And then Harpie Lady 1, if you can get both of them on the field, you're going to be getting an extra 600 attack anyways, and that it just really doesn't matter that much. But like with this, like you summon this and it's already at 1600 attack, so I don't really understand the argument for Cyber Harpie. I just like the Harpie Lady 1. You can sort of juice up all your guys by a little bit extra, and it can sometimes really matter. Then we're playing the 1 copy of Harpie Lady Sisters. I still like playing the 1 copy just to make sure that we can always get off like our Perfumer and our Oracle when needed. And then 1 copy of the Harpie Queen, and then 1 copy of Harpie Dancer. So Queen's going to search your field spell, which really isn't that important nowadays because on the ban list, which I believe we switch over in 2 days to the new format, is going to be with Harpie's Feather Duster at 1, so that's going to be really nice. So we don't really need the field spell that much, but it is still nice to have a couple cards with Harpie in their name. And then Harpie Dancer, it can bounce itself back to the hands, and then you can normal summon another wind monster. So it doesn't really come up that often, but like with the times that it does, it is kind of nice because then you can pop extra stuff with your field spell and whatnot. Then 1 copy of the Barrier Statue of Stormwinds just to get that lock. It just adds 1 card to the main deck. So I really do still like playing that. And then our last monster is going to be 1 copy of Tempest, just because he can be an extra extender every turn, and we can sort of fill up our graveyard with extra wind monsters and whatnot to banish for him. So I still like playing the 1 copy of Tempest, and then he can actually help, since he's a dragon, to increase the level of your channeler as well. So let's head on into the spells. We're going to be playing 3 copies, of course, of the Hysteric Sign, like the best spell card in the deck. So when this is activated, you can either add an Elegant Egotist to your hand, or when this card gets discarded or sent to the graveyard, like by getting blown up by MST, Feather Duster, Twin Twisters, whatever, then you can add, during the end phase, add 3 different Harpie cards from your deck to your hand. So you always want to be getting this off as much as possible. You want to find this in your hand some way, so that's why we're playing a lot of discard cards and whatnot in here to try to get this pitched into the graveyard, as well as just trying to like draw into stuff so we can draw into this. So we're also playing 3 copies of Elegant Egotist. I think this is getting more popular. People were you like playing this at 1 or 2 copies, but you got to be playing this at 3. It's just so free for an easy summon. So you can get it back from the graveyard with Hysteric Sign and your Oracle, but always having an Elegant Egotist in hand is like basically always a good thing. 1 copy of Alluring Mirror Split just to kind of, like mitigate your damage during battle. Then you have your Harpie's Feather Rest, which this is a card that you could cut if you want to, but again, it's in there for just a little bit more draw power to sort of siphon through your deck, and also to recycle some of your Harpie monsters if you're in kind of a grind game. So with this card, sometimes I'll just leave it in my hand. If I really want to, I'll just leave it in my hand. I won't use it. But then those other duels where it's kind of a grind game and it's my only option, I will use it. But otherwise, it can just stay in your hand as a Harpie card for you to discard for your channeler or something like that. Then 1 copy of Hunting Ground adds a little bit extra attack power, which doesn't really matter, but then also can blow up spells and traps when a Harpie is summoned. And then the new, great card for the deck, Harpie's Feather Duster. It's searchable in this deck, and it's recurable. It's just sweet that, you have Harpie's Feather Duster in this deck. So really nice. I'm glad to have it. You can search it a handful of ways with, your Hysteric Party Hysteric Sign, as well as your trap card, the Harpie's Feather Storm. So it's really sweet. Then we're going on into 3 copies of Swallow's Nest. So I am playing this deck a little bit over 40 cards, just because we're playing a couple garnets, like with the Harpie Lady Sisters and whatnot, and the Stormwinds. We don't really want to be drawing those cards, so There, so sort of my reasoning is that if you play this deck, I'm playing this at 44 cards in the main deck. That way you can kind of bury some of those garnets. That way you won't see them. And then you have cards like Swallow's Nest, which is going to increase your consistency. And it can also be used really offensively now with your Cyber Slash, because Cyber Slash's effect goes off whenever a spell card or trap card is activated. So you can actually like use Swallow's Nest, swap out one of your Harpies, and then you can go ahead and activate the effect of Cyber Slash and remove one of your opponent's monsters. So it's really nice in here. Like you and also like your normal summon in this deck, everyone will tell you who's played Harpies. Normal summon is like imperative back in the day before there was so much removal. Like I used to just get stopped with Harpies from like compulsory evacuation device and like trap, like all the trap hole kinds of cards and whatnot. So you always want to be able to use Swallow's Nest. That way you can swap out those cards if they get interrupted on summon, and then you can just basically go from like a channeler into a perfumer and keep comboing there. Then next, just this could be a little bit controversial for people who can't afford it, but I like 3 copies of Triple Tactics Talent in here, because if our opponent does again get off those interruptions and like we don't have Swallow's Nest in hand, then we got to be able to do something like draw extra cards or steal one of our opponent's big boys in order to, like, you know, mitigate that damage. And again, drawing 2 cards in this deck is really crucial so you can get to those important cards. 1 copy of Called by the Grave, because now it's limited to 1 for some reason. My thought process on that was that Konami is trying to sell more copies of like Triple Tactics Talent, and also by limiting Called by the Grave, it kind of hurts Dogmatica because of the Maximus. So I still think 1 Called by the Grave is good in here. I was actually playing Called by the Grave at 1 or 2 copies before the ban list in here, because we have our trap card anyways, so that kind of stops, makes it so you don't really need Called by the Grave, but I like having the 1 in here anyways, just to stop other hand trap shenanigans. 1 copy of Monster Reborn, not totally necessary for this deck because we have the Hysteric Party, but again, if you can't find that Hysteric Party, you really need some other way to get back those monsters. And your Cyber Slash can come back from the graveyard. Like it can only be summoned by Synchro Summon. No, like you can just summon it back with Monster Reborn and bam, you're right back in the action. 1 copy of Double or Nothing. We're playing a lot of level 4 monsters, so why not? For the traps, we're playing 3 copies of the Harpie's Feather Storm. I've already kind of explained this, but basically with this card, if you have a Harpie on the field, you can just activate this card from hand and turn off all of your opponent's monster effects for the turn. And then also, if this card gets blown up by your opponent's card, you're able to search a Harpie's Feather Duster from your deck to your hand, which is legal now. So like that's just totally, like, that's so sweet. Then we got 3 copies of Hysteric Party. This card is a full field Monster Reborn for all of your Harpies that are sitting in the graveyard, including your Cyber Slash. So you need to be playing 3 copies of this. Lastly, 1 copy of Trap Trick. Trap Trick is going to search out, is going to search out your Harpie's Feather Storm a little bit. There's other cards that you could toss in here, like you could put in a 2nd copy of Trap Trick and then try to add in another 2 trap cards in order to like make Trap Trick a little bit more consistent, but it's still nice just having like a 4th copy basically of your Feather Storm in here. So for the extra deck, we are playing, of course, 2 copies of the Cyber Slash Harpie Lady. So the reason why I'm playing 2 is just like there are a few instances where like your 1 would get destroyed and then you want to try to go into a 2nd one. So it's just really nice to play 2, and it's super nice that it's able to be brought back with your Hysteric Party and whatnot. So I like playing 2. You guys could cut it down to 1 if you really want to. But what this thing does is that it can basically be synchro summoned with just 2 Harpie monsters, which is really sweet. You just treat one of the Harpies as a tuner, which is basically like the obvious intention for this card. And then along with that, whenever a spell or trap is activated on either player's turn, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls or 1 Harpie monster that you control and bounce it back to the hand. So you don't always, like, you're rarely ever going to do one of your monsters, but if you really needed to in a pinch, like say there's a few instances, like if you have a Torrential Tribute going on and you just want to pop up a Channeler or something into your hand so that you have something for your next play. But the main thing, like I said, is if you have like that Swallow's Nest and you have another Harpie on the field, you can just chain Swallow's Nest, or just activate Swallow's Nest, sorry, then swap around your cards, and then with your your Harpie lady here, you're able to just bounce one of your opponent's monsters back up to the hand. So it's really nice. It's like just super sweet that you can like just do that over on everybody's turn, and it's like it's just a really solid effect, and it's got 2600 attack, so it's a good beater for the deck. Really solid new support that we really needed for this. One copy of Harpie Conductor. This card isn't totally necessary, but it's just another Harpie name, and it does synergize actually pretty well. If I can ever get out 4 monsters on the field, then I usually just link 2 away for Conductor, and then synchro the others away for that. And putting these 2 on the board is actually a pretty solid board for like the power level of what Harpies generally does. One copy of the Great Fly. This is just a generic card if you're because it doesn't require monsters with different names. So if you're just trying to bump up into like your Simorg of Bird of Sovereignty or something, and you just want to like go into Great Fly for a turn, and then on your next turn, then you just go on into your Simorg. So that's just going to help with that lock with our Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds, and then we're going to go on into the Nightmare Cerberus and Unicorn. So I just like playing these 2 because they have discard effects. The Cerberus is nice in here because it was really nice in here before Cyber Slash, but it's still good in here just for a little bit of monster removal, because that was kind of where the deck faltered at first. One copy of Borrelsword Dragon. It's a dragon, so it can kind of turn on your Channeler's effect, and then also it's just really great for trying to push for that final game, because we can go ahead on into like our Hysteric Party and then just blast into our opponent for some big damage. One copy of the Lightning Chidori for a little bit of spot removal. One Ice Beast Zero Fine. This card is so underrated for this deck, but this card has won me so many games. I love Ice Beast Zero Fine. It's so good. Just turns off effects and gets nice and beefy. One copy of Phantasmal Dragon. It's not going to come up every duel. There's a lot of other stuff that you'll probably go into before Phantasmal, but there are instances like if you just have to poke your opponent for 2000 damage and they're playing like, I don't know, like some deck where they're just playing a bunch of big boss monsters, you can just go into this, and then as long as they have no interruptions for battle, then you can just plow right into your opponent. Then we're playing, obviously, the Utopia Double and regular Utopia. One copy of the number 60 Dugaris the Timeless, because he helps us to draw a few more cards. And he has a couple other decent effects, like doubling attack and whatnot. So if you get out, like, you know, say your opponent has out like Dragon of Red Eyes or whatever, and you're just trying to beat over it or something, this would be a decent way to do that. And then just for our one rank 7 play that we are playing is the number 11 Big Eye. So overall, the extra deck can be tweaked a lot here because there's just so many ways to run Harpies. So guys, just keep that in mind that there are going to be a lot of new deck profiles for Harpies. Just find the one that is tailored to the way that you like to play. I like the pure builds, but also it's really fun to just sort of like slip in the trying to find it, the Bird of Sovereignty, as well as like the Utopia Double engine and stuff, just as like a little bit of backup plans and whatnot. So if you're going first, I like going into the Sovereignty, and if you're going second, just pound into your opponent with Utopia Double and punish them for not playing like Mirror Force and stuff, which nobody does. But overall, there's a lot of different ways to play this deck. So hopefully you guys can find a way that you enjoy it. This is just my build. Let me know what you guys thought about down in the comments. And again, please consider hitting that subscribe button for more amazing deck profiles. There's a lot that's going to be coming up with this new hot ban list that just came out. Thank you for watching. Common Collector out.